If you smell what
Rock and Roll Up, the music and wrestling podcast.
is cooking.
Nah, copyright. Nah, copyright. Because we're doing it with our voices.
Wicca
Cease
freestyle.
and
Here we
desist.
go
Yo,
now.
cease and desist.
Wicca. Hello, mate. Welcome to a themed episode of Rock and Roll Up, the music and wrestling podcast.
And this time, very much wrestling.
The theme is wrestling. What is the title of this particular
the title
episode?
is going to trigger a few people. We're going in
Hashtag
hard
triggered. Eh?
straight away.
Go on.
Why we like that fake thing, wrestling.
Now, we spoke a little bit about the fakeness of wrestling before, haven't we? We've done a couple of bits on that, but we're really going to go deep. It's going to deep dive, isn't it? Really,
we're going to swan dive, swan
yeah.
song.
We're going to dive like Tom Daly and another diver.
Do you know any more divers?
Is his husband a diver?
I don't know. Tom Daly and the
Answers
Divers.
on a postcard.
Please.
Is that a band? Tom Daly and the Divers. They play a lot of surf rock.
Tom Daly and the Holy Divers.
Music.
Holy
Can't discuss
Diver!
that. Nah, that's not copyright. Can't discuss music today. Maybe later on.
Yeah, I think so. This podcast is going to be possibly triggering or upsetting to wrestling fans, but I think we have to.
And confusing to everybody else. Well, I actually think enlightening, educational.
Yeah, exactly.
Dare I say it? A little bit sexy.
Well, a little bit or more.
Grandmaster sex, eh?
Than
That's a deep cut there. Maybe come back to that later on. Google him if you don't know who
Google
Grandmaster
him.
Sexay is.
So
We'll be asking a lot of questions today, I think. Who, what, why, how,
where?
if. Is that a question? Could be.
And also, let's talk about the elephant in the room first before we go any further.
Yeah. How'd you get an elephant in here?
Well, that's a different. That's the music podcast. We'll go into that. Big story on that.
Yeah.
Big time.
That was
big time.
a song you wrote during your drug years.
Many
Brackets. Drug years.
brackets. Yeah.
Close brackets.
Yeah.
What is wrestling?
Well,
what is professional? Because there's a lot of types of wrestling.
professional
But
wrestling.
We're talking about sports entertainment, professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Kenny's going to give us a fantastic overview of the sport. Here we go.
Well, the first issue that you've mentioned there is sport. Is it a sport?
Is
really?
professional wrestling a sport?
Really, I would say professional wrestling is a mix of theatre, reality TV, athletics, and genuine sports like football, but you know, UFC, boxing, contact sports.
Yeah, some martial arts in there for sure. It's sort of a hybrid of. We've discussed this earlier, actually. A little hybrid of all of those things. Seemingly the only kind of hybrid of all of those things. I can't think of anything else that mixes the kind of the theatre, the kind of the visual stuff, the music, kind of the online, the fan interaction, and kind of the sports. But it's kind of, well, we know what it is, don't we? The key word, predetermined.
Well, that's the elephant, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is predetermined, but I think that's something that is levelled at wrestling fans all over. As a bad thing, but
well, predetermined equals fake. Really, that's the
yeah. And we don't.
Einstein, I think, created that particular equation.
E equals predetermined equals fake.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think that we think that's too much of an issue.
I personally have never found it an issue. I think I know we've joked about it before, but the defence that films are fake. And TV's fake. Oh, that's reality TV, but I'm sure even a lot of reality TV is fake. You know, that kind of defence. It's sort of the. I don't quite understand the criticism. I suppose it comes from real sports aren't predetermined. Well, I think that's sort of the criticism.
I think a lot of people level at professional wrestling that, and because of the physical aspect of wrestling,
sure,
that it's some form of competitor to UFC or boxing.
Sure,
and I think that is. You know, although it's similar, and a lot of wrestlers are trained in those mixed martial arts.
Complete crossover, of course.
It's not a competitor at all. WWE doesn't judge its TV ratings against UFC. They judge it against the biggest shows in the United States.
Yeah.
A lot of reality TV and a lot of big TV, especially but also other sports like American football and things like that. So.
Well, they keep their finger on the pulse, if you will, of kind of American sports. But
Yeah.
you know, there is some crossover of fans, of course.
Yeah.
You yourself were quite a big UFC fan. Cage fighter yourself, weren't you, for a while? You fought in a few cages before.
I've broken out of cages. I've broken into cages.
Have you? What was in the cage when you broke in?
I broke into a cage. Turns out was another cage.
Brian Cage.
Brian Cage.
Eh? Another deep, not so deep cut, but quite a deep cut.
Yeah. Anyone who's here for the wrestling, they get that.
Yeah. How many? Yeah. Make a list of how many wrestlers' names we mention. Yeah. And if you don't know wrestling, people that you think are wrestlers, names that we mention, they might not be wrestlers. We might throw some stuff in. You know, Margaret Thatcher, wrestler or not. You decide.
You decide. And
so yeah,
the other thing. The other thing. So it's predetermined, but also the other thing, of course, is it bloody hurts.
That's kind of the thing. I suppose that's that's another argument, isn't it? There's the predetermined argument, and there's the it's fake, they're not really fighting. Well, they are and they aren't.
They are fighting.
They are hitting each other. They are slamming each other. It's a little bit safer than it used to be in terms of like headshots with weapons and things. But there's still a bit of blood. There's bruising. There's broken bones. I mean, injuries are something we can come on to later, but there's a lot of injuries. You know, it hurts. So in what way is, you know, a broken neck sort of fake? You know what I mean? I don't really kind of get that argument.
I think it's broken necks are often done out of mistakes, though. But even
not me, not when I give broken necks.
Never.
No.
When you break necks, it's very much a deliberate action.
I would say 9 times out of 10 it's deliberate.
Yeah.
There's always that one time.
How many necks you break this week?
2 or 3, I think.
2 or 3.
We're just on the way up
already.
Yeah.
You broke a toe and a neck on the way up.
Yeah, I broke my own neck. Yeah, I was trying to look down at my toe as close as I could.
That's the problem.
My head come off.
That's the problem.
Rolled away.
So yeah, I mean, especially wrestling has been very suffered a lot of controversy over the last few years over concussions.
Sean Connery.
Controversial.
Who was that? Who was that you doing there?
That
wasn't Sean Connery.
I went into Tommy Cooper mode.
Yeah.
Just like that. Just like that.
We're doing the impressions later on.
Yeah, I'm doing Tommy Cooper.
I'm doing Cooper.
Just like that.
Tommy Cooper. Yeah. So I think so keywords predetermined, fake. You know, yes, it hurts. So
at the end
how
of
is it
the
fake?
day,
Yes, the results are predetermined, but does it matter? Does it matter that it's predetermined?
Well, I'd say you can't fake falling off an 18-foot ladder.
No.
Through 4 tables.
No.
But
what if I was to tell you it's just all green screen and wrestling is fake? That's right. This is an expose.
Hashtag Illuminati confirmed.
Yeah, confirmed. Jay-Z's to blame.
Yeah, I think the other thing about wrestlers is that, of course, it's legitimized in the sense that it has ex-Olympic champions. It's got UFC fighters and massive stars of bodybuilding and things like that in it.
A lot of people gravitate towards wrestling. It's certainly not an easy career, but it suits sportsmen. You know, because you've got at the end of the day be peak physical fitness. I mean, I suppose there's the anomaly in an act that maybe gets over because they're funny and they're not incredibly built or strong or whatever. But you've got to be pretty damn fit,
especially
to be a wrestler.
Especially these days. I mean.
Well, these days more than ever.
The amount of athleticism that goes
it's like
into
gymnastics,
wrestling.
really, half of it, isn't it? It's unbelievable. So I think to sort of counter the argument that it's fake, yes, it's predetermined, doesn't really matter. Yes, it's kind of a hybrid of a lot of kind of entertainment and sports and things. There's some fantastic athletes who do get hurt, you know what I mean? So I suppose really we could talk about maybe, you know, what when we say wrestling, what do people think? What do people think of? Do they think of wrestlers? I'll tell you what they normally think of. Kids watch wrestling, don't they?
Yeah, that's it.
Now, we're not children. Well, actually, our girlfriends will probably disagree with that, but we you know...
We're very much grown men.
We're mid-20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've
got a beard.
I'm rapidly approaching 30.
Yeah. How are you feeling about that?
Well, you know, I don't want to cry on camera.
No.
So...
Again.
Not again. Anything but after the last time.
Yeah. If you want to cry, have a cry, mate.
Thank you.
Have a cry now.
So, yeah, children. I think, but a lot of that is we're at a particular point in history where wrestling hit its mainstream peak in the late 90s.
Yeah, I suppose we could talk slightly about history of wrestling, but I mean, yeah, when people say wrestling, they think attitude era, don't they?
Well,
Certainly in WWE sense.
People are either thinking Stone Cold and The Rock,
It's the stars that went kind of to the mainstream.
or they're thinking Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And
a little bit controversial these days, but arguably an icon, of course, in wrestling. But
pre-Gorka Hogan.
yeah, PG Hogan.
PG Hogan.
PG tips.
PG tip. Yeah. The thing is, that was possibly the only tip of his racism. So
Hey, I've seen his tip in that video that got released.
Whoop. Shout out to Hogan. Ever want to come on, Hogan?
Sorry, you have watched the video. Yeah, so children. Let's get back to children.
Yeah, not coming on Hogan.
No, coming on. So most people still associate it with children. What do we say to that? It's just for kids, they say. I'm going to come up to you in the street. You like wrestling. You got a wrestling t-shirt on. Yeah. That's for kids. What do you say?
I'm going to say, why are you being nasty to me?
Get back in your cage.
Get back.
I think really it's... Well, it isn't, is it? Obviously there's kids there. I'm very family orientated, especially now.
I think there's a wide variety of wrestling, and there is wrestling for children.
Of course there is.
And that's great.
And that's great. It's the colours, it's the larger than life sort of superheroes. You know, we'll talk a little bit about us when we got into it as kids in a bit, but you know, it's colourful, it's loud, it's kind of cool, it's like kind of Marvel, you know what I mean? And these people are doing incredible physical feats. Yeah, kids love it, but you know, I love it as well. So
you can't take that away.
Stop attacking me.
Please stop. Can people stop coming up to me in the street and saying, "Why do you like wrestling?"
I think it's the kind of entertainment that does, and well, it does appeal to kind of everyone.
Yeah,
from all age ranges.
Not all plays are the same, you know.
Exactly.
That's what I'd say.
You give some, you take some. You like something, you don't like something.
Indeed.
But I think wrestling is kind of inclusive.
I think anyone who hasn't watched wrestling, who maybe is watching, I keep saying watching, listening to this podcast out of the goodness
Someone's
in their heart of knowing us, maybe watch a bit of wrestling.
I think so.
And just suspend your disbelief, and you'll have a bloody good time.
And there's all kinds of different wrestling, isn't there? Of course, we the main kind, of course it isn't, but the biggest company, arguably wrestling company on earth, WWE, formerly WWF. They gave up looking out for pandas and started beating people up. But other promotions out there's all kinds of wrestling. That's the more sports entertainment, glitz and glamour side of wrestling.
The reality.
There's your independent wrestling, which is the smaller companies. The UK, obviously, incredible scene at the moment, but all over the world.
All over.
You know, some fantastic. A little bit more of a strong style. Strong style meaning sort of basically more aggressive, more fight-like,
harder hitting.
Some fantastic promotions over here. You've got your Japanese kind of stuff, New Japan.
Yeah.
Again, very martial arts based.
Yeah, I think that's a growth, isn't it? That I think kids, you know, New Japan is not for kids.
No. No.
They don't have kids at their shows.
There's not many.
It's WWE, you know, people like John Cena get a bad rap, but you know, in terms of family-friendly entertainment, he is.
Well, he opens the door, doesn't he?
He's the king, isn't he?
He's the gatekeeper, really. Is talk about crossover. Of course, now he's moving to movies as The Rock and people like that did before him. But there's all kinds of wrestling out there, you know.
Indeed. Talking of all kinds of wrestling, let me cast your mind back.
Go on, back to when
you're a young child.
Back for good.
And saying that wrestling's for children. Think about when you were a child.
Oh, yeah.
And let's talk about how we got into wrestling.
Do you want to start? You start.
I'll start.
So I've done a bit of I've monologued.
So I remember.
What do you remember? When did it begin for you?
For me, it began at home. It began at home.
Yeah. We must say we're not wrestlers. Before people go, oh, so they actually no.
Yeah.
No.
Physical activity.
I can't even do a forward roll.
Don't get on that well.
No.
I like watching. I mean, I'm a big sports fan. Sports.
Yeah, you like sports.
I like watching other people work really hard. What on my sofa.
Telling them you could do it better.
Eating a Bakewell slice.
Yeah, you had a couple of them today, haven't you?
Well, yeah. I'll have had the rest by the end of the night.
You're in training for that foodathon. that eat-a-thon you're going to.
I'm the world champion at that.
You are.
It started at home for me, and for anyone who
your dad used to beat you up.
Oh no.
Didn't want to bring that up.
Sorry.
He is going to cry.
It did start with my father. And him having old Silver Vision videos. Did you ever see those?
Silver Vision.
Yeah, they were the people that
Rings a bell.
that sort of owned, I suppose, WWE videos, and they put them out. It was Silver Vision.
That's right. I saw a lot of them at boot sales. I
That's
think.
right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I had the classic 1992 Rumble.
Okay. Well, of course.
I had
Iconic.
WrestleMania 1
Yep.
and the 1988 Survivor Series.
Yep.
And I just wore those tapes out. I just watched them
Really?
over. I knew exactly, I knew the results, but I just watched them.
But what was it about them that made you want to watch them over and over again then?
I suppose
'Cause once you've seen the result,
with WrestleMania 1, to be honest, it was probably Mr. T. And seeing him in that tag match.
Brilliant. So
And
a man that isn't a wrestler.
Roddy
wow.
Piper and
Legend.
but seeing Hogan and I think
The larger than life characters. As we were
although
going back to.
WrestleMania 1 was the earliest, my main thing that I remember is the Royal Rumble '92. Just being a young kid and seeing this kind of ring of people, this kind of squared circle, if you will.
Oh yeah.
Full.
Terminology.
Full of people just beating each
Sweaty people.
beating it big, larger than life men, beating each other up. And just as a kid, sat there thinking, this is just fantastic.
It's like King Kong versus 40 other Godzillas.
I know. And then seeing
King Kong Bundy. Deep cut.
deep cut, and then seeing Ric Flair go from
Woo! Woo! Woo!
That's not so deep. That's not so deep cut. Yeah.
Ooh.
I think they've got that.
Ooh, everyone at home do it.
1, 2, 3.
They did it. Well
They
done.
did it. Well done. Well,
A couple of them not so good, but well done.
yeah. That person at the back.
You said ooh.
You could do with a bit of work, but
Yeah.
seeing Ric Flair go in at number 3, I believe.
Woo!
And you can't say Ric Flair without doing some sort of
A
slap.
chop, known for his wooing and his chopping
without
and his sleeping around.
and he's getting drunk at airports. Rick, get some help, mate.
Rick, he'll be on here.
Yeah, come
Yeah,
on.
I'm
lad.
helping him with his recovery.
You're very much the DDP of Ric Flair's life.
I am, yeah. That's right.
Seeing him go in at number 3 and just, not knowing it was predetermined, I suppose, at that time, and seeing
Well, you don't, do you? No.
and seeing that this guy lasting everybody, and then the shock, thing at the end with Hogan pulling out Sid Vicious and Flair winning it.
He fought through to the bitter end, a hero.
It was just
For a
magical.
small child, that is someone to look up to,
It was just magical. And then I suppose going on, my dad used to watch Monday Nitro.
Well, that's it. So you started watching it weekly, not just the special shows, but you'd
Well,
watch it weekly. Or
Anyone, shout out to anyone who couldn't afford Sky when they were young because they were poor.
Ding.
And
That hasn't changed.
Yeah, and I still don't have Sky now.
No.
So I still have to, but I just get WWE through other means. Leave that open ended. But having
Can't pay for all of it.
the best thing is free wrestling, I think, on free TV, and
Yeah.
when Cartoon Network changed to TNT in the
Wow.
evening,
That is a callback.
and at 10 p.m. had Monday Nitro, and my dad used to watch it,
Yeah.
and I presume I would have stayed up and watched a few, but I was quite young at that time. But having free wrestling on TV, and I'll come on to essentially what got me back into wrestling actually is wrestling on free TV. It's brought up a lot, and I'm a big WCW guy back in the day,
Sure.
just because I suppose that was the free one.
Isn't that funny how that sort of sculpted your likes, your dislikes? Is that just what was available to you?
Well, yeah, I know other people that I knew got into wrestling that had, their parents had more money. They were WWE fans, and I think that was the difference,
All
wasn't it?
about the money.
You were either into Stone Cold in the UK, at least. I think you were into Stone Cold,
Yeah.
and The Rock if you had money, and if you didn't, then you loved Sting.
Ted DiBiase had money
Yeah,
because he's a $1 million man,
And
wasn't he?
money, and that's Shane McMahon.
Dollar. Yeah. He's not quite as good. Oh, he is the best in the world.
Of course,
Officially.
officially.
Google that.
So that that got me
So you were watching on and off from then, really, weren't
Sting.
you? So it was from the big pay-per-views, the larger-than-life
Yeah.
characters, and you
Mm.
kind of were like, "Wow, I want to source this. I want to see it." Obviously, there wasn't the means online then. There wasn't the accessibility, but you watched it free on TV.
Yeah, I think, and then the big turning point for me, I suppose, in terms of as I hit my adolescence, was the NWO and Hogan.
That's when wrestling became not just sort of entertaining, but cool.
It became
Really
bloody cool.
Yeah.
The NWO were the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
When I was younger.
They did graffiti.
They
He dyed his
they
beard
beat
a bit.
people up. They wore
Yeah.
black and white, which pretty much is all I wear to this day.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the NWO, Sting and the NWO. I mean, I got into WWE, Taker. You know, like I said, I was into early.
Yeah, who were your favourites then? Who was sort of moving on through the pay-per-views, through the weekly? You know, who were people you'd keep coming back to, and they were your kind of people you looked up to?
Well, Undertaker, I
icon.
loved. My brother loved Kane. I loved the Undertaker.
Yeah.
Brothers of Destruction. We kind of saw ourselves as a little bit of
Very much
Brothers
so.
of Destruction.
Yeah. You burnt the house. What was their story? He burnt the house down. Or he killed his parents.
He killed his parents.
And he got burnt, but the scars were actually internal and not physical.
That was rubbish, wasn't it?
But he did wear a mask for some
That was
time.
awful. Yeah, awful.
Now he's a mayor now, Kane.
Yeah,
Terrifying.
He's had a mayor. His career's been a bit of a mayor, isn't it? Since the sort of 2001 onwards.
Yeah. Strange one, really.
And obviously Kurt Angle, which is a massive. He's just fantastic.
Well,
isn't he?
Olympic athlete.
Well,
Won the gold medal with a broken
freaking
neck. That's
not
right.
just a broken neck.
No.
How about yourself, Jack? What?
Where did it start for me?
You're a bit later than me, aren't you?
I am. I don't know the age.
I mean, I'm not that much
think,
older than you, but I think
no.
maybe.
What, you 34 now?
Yeah. Was your dad into wrestling?
No,
that must have been it, I think.
No, he wasn't. My dad's nan, so I suppose my great nan, she used to watch World of Sport, so sort of traditional British wrestling. You know, your giant haystacks, your big daddies,
those kind of people.
big men, belly flopping around.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had some great kind of, you know, your Johnny Saints and all those kind of people who did amazing British technical wrestling.
Was Dynamite Kid on World of Sport?
Oh.
Possibly.
Bulldog was. Yeah, a couple of them were on it briefly, before they got snapped up.
What a wrestler that guy was.
Well, those guys, I mean, it is the British and Japanese styles now that are kind of blended with obviously athleticism and crazy stuff that's really kind of paved the way for kind of modern wrestling, really. But obviously, yeah, British wrestling as an institution, really. So I think she did have it on when I went. I didn't meet her many times. Obviously, she was very old even when I was young. But she was a big World of Sport fan, and I think she even watched some of the American stuff. I don't know how she got it. Yeah. Probably pirated it back then in the 70s.
She was on Pirate Bay.
She was she invented it. But yeah, so she used to love it, and that kind of. I think I heard about it through people, and then. I saw a lot of videos. I saw, like you did, a lot of videos in kind of. I used to go to a lot of charity shops, still do, and boot sales and all this kind of second-hand things. And there was a period. It's still in there now, but not as many. There's a period where wrestling videos were absolutely everywhere.
They were.
You couldn't get away from them, and it may have actually started from a video. Like you, I think maybe Dad got them in. I wish I remembered exactly when, but I think maybe he bought. Maybe I bought. I think it was 3 or 4 for like a couple of quid, and there were like a couple of specials in there. I think it was like they did those kind of best ofs, which was like, you know, Mankind Volume 1. Well, and it was like all the cool Mankind stuff.
They were great for UK. I mean, we're for anyone who doesn't know, we're both from the UK. Grew up in the UK.
Yeah. Quite right, sir.
Quite indeed.
Indeed.
And, you know, I think that kind of thing, it was hard to consume wrestling.
Well, it was.
If you were young,
well, yeah,
and your parents didn't have
like you
Sky
said, didn't have
or
money.
weren't into it.
It was videos.
It was very hard.
Yeah, it was hard. So
you were catching up on pay-per-views possibly months later.
It was the same thing. Yeah, it was kind of best ofs and compilations and yeah, kind of random videos. I definitely had a video of The Rock. I remember that.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, just still one of the best ever, really. You know, just the way he would talk, again, larger than life, and I managed to convince Dad to buy a pay-per-view. And this wasn't crazy
nice.
early. This was only sort of early 2000s, I think.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I'd bought a few figures over the time I started collecting more videos and things. I bought a few of the Mattel kind of action figures, and I'd sort of play with them. And I think even back then, I think we both do this. We sort of, as many people do, fantasy book angles now, and think of how desirable ways we would like matches to end and all this kind of thing, and kind of tell the story. I used to do that obviously when I was young, and I managed to convince my dad to pay for a show that was in the UK, Insurrection, possibly 2002, and
big shows.
Stayed up for it. Yeah, I think
shows.
I think it was on. I think it was on at 10 p.m. I might be wrong.
Well, yeah, Nitro when it was on TNT started at 10.
I think it was, even though it was in the UK, I think because they wanted it still to be accessible for America, I think it was on at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
That was late for me. I couldn't believe me luck.
Very late.
I watched it, and it was the first time where I thought these kind of larger-than-life superheroes had come to... I didn't live in London, but, I lived in Essex at that point, so it wasn't that far. They were where I was, and that was unbelievable for me. I couldn't believe it, and I was so invested. Obviously, I didn't know that it was predetermined. I suppose I didn't know that anything about that, but it just blew my mind, and I stayed up, and it was exciting, and I began to kind of writing the stats down and writing the results down. Then I would kind of
a deep dive.
I would play that out with my figures,
yeah.
And then I started buying the games on PS1, PS2.
For me, I think that was a massive part of it,
and
as
that just changed things. That was next level fandom, because you could play as The Rock, you could play as Stone Cold.
Yeah, and again, not having that access to the show, but easily being able to buy the games,
and you could make your own show.
Because I was hugely into video games from sort of like 7 maybe.
Yeah, I was quite late. I was like PS1 when I first started.
Yeah, I went Mega Drive, Mega CD, and then back onto PS1. So having those
Mega Powers
and
deep cut,
baby. So having the ability to play those games was almost the way of connecting to the show.
Do you remember the game where there was a storyline where you went into a bathroom stall with a diva? Can't really say diva these days, but that was part of the story. That you'd go in there, and I guess things would happen. You'd maybe talk politics.
Have a little chat.
You'd have a little mate's chat.
That's
Do you remember that?
I don't. Was Paige in there?
Paige wasn't in that. Paige. That was sort of... I couldn't believe that. Like that was the thing.
That's crazy.
Like introducing these kind of females, and like suddenly you could, your decisions impacted the game storyline.
That was great, wasn't it?
That was amazing. Suddenly I had
your own character.
And like it was just amazing, And once I was playing the games, of course, I was hooked, and I would watch as much as I could. Then we got Sky. Unlike you little peasant, we got Sky.
Well, the only time we ever had Sky was when my dad got made redundant.
When you nicked it. Oh.
And he was better off being made redundant than he was working.
Really?
And we could actually have Sky.
Bloody Britain.
Yeah.
Thatcher.
Bloody. Well, it was probably during Blair, but bloody
Blair.
So you had Sky?
So I had Sky.
Oh yeah.
And
Dad got a pay rise, did he?
He did, until he got slip discs, and he couldn't work for 2 years. Remember
Shout out to Neil.
Yeah.
Funny that both our dads are called Neil.
That is funny, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway.
Shout out to Neil. I don't mean your
Not
dad.
that Neil. Which Neil?
Both.
Neil Armstrong.
And neither.
Neil before me.
Neil Kinnock.
Oh. Political. Is he a wrestler?
Who knows? Answer on a postcard.
Who knows? So, yeah, I actually, it was sort of, I can't remember the name of it. It was sort of the best of the way. They still do it now. It's sort of like, not the whole show. Obviously, Sky Sports do show the whole show, but then they did like a recap package. And then there was
like a Saturday morning or something?
It was on Saturday morning. And then there was it was like Challenge, but it wasn't Challenge. What was the channel that always showed The Simpsons? There was
on
a channel.
Sky?
Yes.
Sky One.
Was it Sky One?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
It was Sky One. They would do like kind of a best of thing, and suddenly it was on TV.
Yeah.
And I was watching it every week, and then I was super invested. And I watched, and I bought the DVDs. This is when DVDs were starting to become a thing. More figures. I was buying the books. I was like learning about their lives, and that I think is when it just the whole predetermined thing, just the penny dropped a little bit when I started
all
reading
of a
the books about them. And it wasn't books about them as wrestlers per se. It was books about them as men, as women becoming wrestlers. And I thought, okay, they're not one in the same.
No, they've got lives and they're not. And you start to think, oh, these are actually careers.
And I found it, I found it interesting, and I obviously we love that, behind the scenes stuff and all that kind of stuff today.
Now,
but even then, I think it's probably where it started. And I'm still by the book, so I wasn't fazed by it. But something happened. So you kind of kept watching on and off, didn't you? Pretty much the whole way through.
Yeah, I mean, so
see, I didn't.
That was our sort of childhood connection.
Yeah,
and I think that as we got older, I think identified with it in another sense, which is obviously this is the music and wrestling podcast. There are two big passions, probably along with video games.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think
couldn't fit that in the title.
And also along with video games.
Yeah.
There's a big connection, isn't there, between wrestling and music, which is really the reason why we've started this podcast, and especially rock and metal. Wrestling creates a kind of subgenre, a subgroup of people, doesn't it? It attracts a lot of the
community.
Same people. It's a community.
Yeah, there is a community.
And a lot of those people also really like heavy metal. Would that be fair to say?
I would say a lot of people, yeah.
I mean,
90%.
There's no coincidence that NXT, which is WWE's developmental program, have shows at Download Festival which are full to the rafters.
We've been ourselves, haven't we? We've seen a few NXT shows there, and obviously they were amazing. Great vibe, kind of festival wrestling, very different to even an independent kind of inside show. But there is a link. That there's something. I don't know. Is it because you're considered a little nerdy, perhaps? Is it because it's kind of alternative?
You're a little bit of out there.
There's something genetically. There's something in terms of your hobbies that there's a crossover there. A lot of themes and things are rock, metal. Certainly now, not so much back in say 70s, 80s, but even then they were. Now it's almost exclusively rock and metal kind of entrance themes, or kind of pop.
And you've got, of course, Motorhead performing at WrestleMania.
Well, so many bands playing at wrestling shows. It does attract
Kid Rock, Motorhead, having Limp Bizkit,
being Flow Rider,
Undertaker,
rock heavy metal icon Flow Rider. There's definitely
there's a big connection,
there, and we fall right into that bracket, But entrance themes, I mean, that was one of the most exciting things, certainly as a kid, and even now that we've both been performing for some time musically and songwriting and all these kind of things. Now more than ever, we're very kind of analytical towards music, I think. And but looking back, the music, especially, was just out of this world, wasn't it? Just from one note, you could tell your favourite wrestler was coming in. That's something that I think people. It's a very sort of strange. There must be a word for it. There's sort of a strange emotion. There's something in you when you hear your favourite wrestler's theme. There's some just
and you know exactly what it is.
You know they're coming. It's excitement. It's very strange, but
it's really great. And the music, like you said, has just been fantastic over the years. It
evokes so many memories. I mean,
and
Taker, for example, like you said, just think of some of your favourite wrestlers. I mean. This kind of funeral. I know you had many themes, including Limp Bizkit, but there's kind of the funeral dirge. As someone's walking to the ring, music, and it's very filmic. It's very cinematic. I think that's a lot of the reason why I like it. But it just transports you, doesn't it? It's someone walking towards you, a ring.
It's the whole lot, isn't it? It's the smoke.
It's the smoke. He's kind of evil. He's sort of the music, the whole kind of sensory overload, especially as a kid. Just incredible. But I still have that kind of excitement now. I don't think it's really ever gone. Maybe it's kind of translated in. It's kind of gone a little different way, I suppose.
Yeah, I think we'll get on to sort of how we've developed now. So, we dipped in and out, didn't we? You kind of fell out of love.
I fell out of love with it. You know what? It was Ruthless Aggression. Obviously, we were around very young during the peak of wrestling.
Can you so Ruthless Aggression, for anyone who doesn't know, is kind of 2004-ish?
It was probably earlier than that. It's probably
2002-ish, maybe?
Maybe even earlier. It was sort of seeing in the millennium, wasn't it? It was sort of like the end of... There was kind of the old era of wrestling, or kind of the world of sport and the big men.
Yeah, when WCW
Yeah.
WCW went out of business.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. There was kind of the Attitude Era where suddenly these other promotions were competing, and it was kind of a bit raunchy, and there was kind of blood and sex, and
Trying
it was
to
kind of
outdoing
each other,
Yeah.
and it was a real competition in terms of TV numbers, and there was some of the best wrestlers in the world, and everyone was a character because they had to be a character, because they had to be relatable, because they wanted to beat these other shows. Wrestling was starting to become such a competitive thing. And then when WWE inevitably put most people out of business, as they like to do, they sort of, it changed, and people such as John Cena, who we've mentioned, great in his own right, they came in, and it shattered my vision of wrestling. It
became
felt sterile, and it felt like a business now. It didn't feel like a community that I was welcomed into.
Yeah.
And he had a little spinny belt thing that I didn't like. He was kind of this cool white rapper. I didn't like it. And there was suddenly, I think it probably linked up with puberty as well, to be honest. I suddenly became very, I sort of suddenly felt like I was a bit old for it.
You think it was a bit silly?
I thought it was a bit silly.
I think the whole John Cena thing with the bright T-shirts and the big... Well, no, back then I suppose it was Thugonomics Cena, which was kind of big gold chains.
Yeah.
Boxes over his shorts.
Yeah, I just thought
silly
it was
spinning
silly.
belt.
This is for kids, I thought. And as I was becoming more analytical when I got older, and I was just reading between the lines of some of these angles, people being pushed off things and they should have died, but they didn't, and just like silly things where I thought, well, that's not real. That would never happen. And of course it didn't. Half the stuff would never happen.
Yeah.
But that's when I suddenly went, I can't suspend my disbelief anymore.
Yeah.
I can't watch it. And I sold all my stuff.
Yeah.
I sold all my wrestling stuff. That was it. I didn't watch. I had calendars even. There was topless men all over my room. They were gone.
There still is now.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Very different reasons.
Yeah. But, I just didn't want it anymore.
No.
And I completely stopped. Whereas you were kind of in and out a little bit more, weren't you? I didn't play the games, nothing. I was do it.
Still playing the games, and I would watch as the internet sort of grew more, and especially when I went to university and had access to slightly better internet, I would watch probably WrestleMania, Royal Rumble each year. Keep up with roughly what was going on. Not watching Raw or SmackDown, of course. But then again, ironically, it was another thing to do with being not quite poor that brought me back into wrestling.
Go on.
So
you had to wrestle for money.
Precisely.
Yeah, to feed your
I was
family.
wrestling homeless men for money, and I thought, I used to watch something like this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you did a choke slam. You thought, hang on, this rings a bell.
I thought, I wonder if I
is
could
my
make
move.
money from. Oh my God, hold on. It was TNA. It was, funnily enough,
wow,
TNA.
Can't say that anymore.
Don't say that.
Impact, isn't it?
The job between the deal between Challenge TV and TNA to bring TNA again,
Classic.
professional wrestling, professional American wrestling,
Yeah.
back to UK TV for free.
Yeah. TNA, a promotion that has had its ups and downs over the years. A lot of
Massive
money issues, a lot of booking issues, a lot of issues. Somehow still going. Actually, some people say it's some of the best stuff that they've ever done at the moment, but always controversy there. But see, I never watched TNA. I
TNA
really
was,
didn't. But you were really quite invested in it.
I loved it. I mean, I watched it. I think the deal challenge went in when Hogan went to TNA, and
what a draw! I mean,
it was, and it brought people in, and it was. Now I know more about it. It was probably TNA's worst years.
Wow, that's the irony, isn't it?
But I did go to.
Just what blinded.
I went to TNA live shows 3 years in a row.
Yeah,
I went all the way to London.
You went to way more live shows than I did.
To watch TNA, and now, such a fantastic kind of look back and say that I've seen people like AJ Styles live, I've seen Samoa Joe live, I've seen Bobby Roode live, I've seen James Storm, I've seen Christopher Daniels.
Yeah.
I may have even seen the Young Bucks when they were Generation Me. I can't quite remember.
Could have done. That was early days. But
Jarrett, Sting,
they're
huge
names,
guys,
man. Legends.
Jeff Hardy,
WWE Hall of Famer Jeff Jarrett.
Exactly. So see, you know, having loved WWE in the past, and then suddenly there were, you know,
there were these other people,
older WWE guys, as well as amazing young guys like Styles and Joe. The mix of the two was just great, and it was free of, it was a free again, and it's just
anything that's free with you, isn't it? Don't want to pay for nothing.
And
this
again,
guy.
it was quite a beautiful thing because, then I used to sit down and I could stay up late then, and I could watch wrestling.
Big boy, late times
with me dad and my brother.
You see, that's something I never really did. I would sort of rope Dad in a bit. Elliot, my brother, never really watched it, but you bit of a family thing with you, wasn't it? A little bit.
Very much music and wrestling.
Yeah, music more so for me.
Yeah. Wrestling as well with me, and video games. My family have always been into
tight knit, aren't they?
They're quite
good group of people.
They're a tight knit and music, wrestling, video game. I mean, I play. When I was a kid, I completed Streets of Rage with my mum countless times.
Wow.
I had no friends.
No. Wow. Yeah.
And my brother did as well. Played it with my mum. It was a family thing. We would often give up all of our presents at Christmas just to buy a PlayStation.
Yeah.
And have nothing else. As a whole family, it was wonderful times.
Really? You lived in sort of Dickensian London, didn't you? You were a chimney sweep for a bit.
Oh yeah, you know.
Yeah. Shoe shiner.
Would you like your shoe shine, sir?
That's a good
It's
impression.
only a
It's
nickel,
only
not a nickel.
A nickel.
Penny farthing.
Blimey, you've crossed to the continent. You were kind of I think it opened your eyes to sort of all this other stuff. There's not just this promotion. There's not just these wrestlers. There's all these other ones, and obviously that's continued all the way through to today, where we're really spoilt for choice. I mean, I ain't got enough hours in the day to watch all the different wrestling out there.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just too much.
My ignorance was so far to the point that, as I said, I watched Rumble and Mania each year normally, especially from 18 onwards.
Yeah, you still maintained it, man. I was out. I was solely focused on music.
I watched Sheamus, Bro Kick, Daniel Bryan at the first match of WrestleMania for the WWE title, I think.
Yes.
And I watched it.
Yes.
And I had no idea who this guy that had just been demolished was, and it was Daniel Bryan.
Really? So I missed a lot of his stuff.
That's how out of it I was. So
yeah. Well, it really was sort of 2014-ish, where both of us really sort of at the same time started watching a little bit more, and I think it was actually the 2K video games that really got me back into it. I think I was playing Fight Night, the boxing game, and then I was playing great, and they might talking about bringing it back actually. And then I thought, well, I remember I used to play a lot of wrestling games. I wonder if they've got any out, and I must have been 14 because I think that might have been one of the first 2K games. And I bought it second hand, and I didn't know hardly any of the people. I recognised some of the people that I used to like. You know, I don't know who was in it at that point. There might have been some rights issues, so actually not a lot of my favourites were in it. But like Kane I used to love Kane. Kane was in it. Taker was in it.
Yeah.
You know, but there wasn't any people like Kurt Angle or Rey Mysterio or the Hardys or anything, because they'd all long gone at WWE. Like I didn't know nothing about the politics or the people going to different promotions. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
But I bought the game and I played it, and I kind of didn't, I didn't know half the people, but it just tickled me a little bit. It tickled my fancy. I just thought, well, maybe I'll give it a watch. You know, maybe I'll give it a bloody watch again, and I did, and it sort of came flooding back to me, man. You know,
you loved it,
and it was sort of side by side of all sort of childish excitement. Oh, I remember the Big Show. I remember these people.
The Big Show.
Well, it's the Big Show.
One of the greatest entrance themes ever, maybe.
One of the biggest men ever, apparently. And suddenly I was playing the game again, and I was like, oh, it's all bringing it back.
Yeah.
And I started to watch, and I started to like what I was seeing. That didn't last for long. When I started to really get kind of interested in the behind the scenes stuff again, and I read a lot of the books again, and I really started to learn the backstage politics and the terminology, and then really we sort of sort out spoilers is what it is. We started to read about booking decisions and kind of middle management and people that weren't happy with their contracts, and it was this whole other world of sort of investigating behind the curtain. Suddenly, I could actually Google these people, and I could follow them online, and I could see what they were doing when they weren't wrestling. I couldn't do that before.
And I could see, are they unhappy with where they are? Are they this? Are they that? It is very much became a kind of... That was almost part of it as much as the wrestling was.
It may even
the
be
stories,
more so.
the
It's
fantasies.
crazy. It's what could happen, what will happen,
Yeah.
what's the rumours. It's like... Well, they say it's the longest running episodic series on American television, don't they? Raw, I think. But it really is like a TV series that you love, never ending. So eventually it's going to go downhill. But then it's kind of peaks and troughs again. But I'm still, even if I don't watch it loads at the moment, because arguably WWE is, just look at the viewing figures, they ain't doing very well. But of course, there's all these other promotions that we'll check out and things. I'm still dipping in and out on the news, you know what I mean? As much as probably more so than the matches.
I watch the news. You know, I watch... other YouTubers and people doing other podcasts talking about wrestling way more than I watch wrestling.
Isn't that funny? What a strange thing.
It is weird.
We're now sort of part of a subgenre, sort of subgroup of sort of let's say, I hate the phrase, but smart wrestling fans. But we kind of we don't watch it at face value. There's kind of a little bit more to it, and it really has created a whole other kind of side of enjoyment for us.
What I would side of
and
enjoyment,
also ruined wrestling.
Pretty much. We've become, as I think, the more and more you know about wrestling, the more you hate it and cynical you become.
I'm so cynical now.
I
should have booked this better. I could have booked that better.
Yeah.
He's made a mistake.
Yeah.
I don't like his new gimmick. I didn't know any of that when I was a kid. I just took it. I either liked them or I didn't like them. Heel or face, good or bad.
Yeah.
That was it.
And you go, you know, they've done this. I wonder what their contract situation is.
Now you can go, well, he used to be a drug addict.
Yeah.
And it sways your opinion, and that's craziness.
Yeah.
But it does.
Yeah. I mean, we still watch the main...
We watch a lot. We watch New Japan. We watch the WWE pay-per-views.
Well, I think that's it. I think,
you know,
as we've got to know more about it,
Ring of Honor,
when we restarted in 2014 or so,
we researched it big time, didn't we?
We discovered that there's a world beyond WWE, and I think that's where we're at now. I know we're not going to speak too long about Japan, but it really is
opened our eyes again, didn't it?
It is the I mean, for going back to right at the beginning of this episode, which was a good 3/4 an hour ago.
Yeah,
we've done a deep dive into this.
I think an hour was a good special length.
A special, yeah. It's
got a special length.
A special. It doesn't take an hour though.
Well, don't take an hour.
It very much, going back to the beginning of this, even the idea that wrestling is fake. Go and watch some Japan, and or some wrestling in South America. Yeah, and you know that's as close to sport as it could possibly be, whilst also being predetermined.
It's sort of legitimacy, isn't it? It's. I think as we've got older, we've certainly sought out better wrestling, more realistic wrestling. But I think because it's more enjoyable, the more athletic, the more kind of, I don't want to say brutal. I don't want to actually see people getting seriously hurt because I don't really enjoy that. But it's just damn good, isn't it? Arguably the Japanese wrestling is
just crazy.
It's probably the best in the world. It's very much treated like a sport out there.
I think probably,
you know, in the newspapers even, isn't it?
I don't think it is entirely. It's by no means controversial to say that in 2019, over the last 5 years of wrestling on this planet have been the best period of wrestling of all time.
Yeah, I would put
the last
I'd put that nickel on that.
You could say the last 2 years have been the best 2 years of any.
Well, you look at the I know it opens up a whole debate in terms of rating systems and things. But look at the amount of 5-6 star matches. You know, some of the arguably the best wrestling matches ever to have existed.
Well, I think
in the last 2-3 years,
probably the greatest match of all time happened.
I think, and
the greatest trilogy, the greatest match, Kenny Omega Okada.
I think it's
being.
Yeah, it's almost the obvious opinion these days, but I just think it's the right one, to be honest. Yeah, you can say it's opinion all you want. It's fact.
Yeah,
it's statistical fact. Yeah, whether you believe in statistics or not. Yeah, but you know we've sought out a lot of stuff from you know other promotions. Obviously, your Evolves and all this kind of. And we've seen a few progress, and we've seen a lot of live shows
that are non-WWE now, which they're just fantastic.
We've seen some Japanese stuff.
We managed
to. Stuff.
We were lucky enough to see the first New Japan Pro Wrestling
Yeah.
show in the UK.
Was it Strong Style Evolved? Is that what it was
Strong Style
called?
Evolved,
Yeah,
yeah, they did.
fantastic.
We saw the Milton Keynes.
Milton
show.
Keynes, shout out.
Shout out to Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes, massive. Yeah, what a show. What an atmosphere. Real kind of sport enchanting atmosphere.
Yeah,
I mean,
brilliant.
I got a chant started. Should we talk about that?
Go on. So we're talking last summer,
Yeah.
height of the World Cup.
Height of the World Cup. British boy, one of the best wrestlers in the world. Will
world.
Ospreay was there. And he was having a good match, doing what he does. Flipping about, selling, technical. He's got it all.
Everything.
What'd you hear from the back?
Go on.
Ospreay's coming home. He's coming home. He's coming home. He's coming. Everyone starts doing it, don't
Everyone
they?
starts.
I couldn't believe it. That was a dream of mine. What I do really do
Start
sound
a
like a
wrestling
fucking smart,
chant.
don't I? I started a chant, and people sung it. And you know what? I sung it twice, and it was on Will Ospreay's Instagram story. I've fangirled.
You went crazy.
I went wrong. I was his best mate from then.
From
I
there.
wanted him to come to my wedding.
He's
you know,
coming.
I haven't planned it yet.
He's going to
coming.
flip about.
Yeah, you know, he hasn't responded to the initial messages yet, but
Messages.
he's hoping.
Yeah.
Several
Quite a few.
thousand. I started a chant. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Again, community. That's what it's about. It's like a family. We're sort of part of like a sort of special gang or special group.
Yeah, and I think, you know, wrapping up, I think that's part of it, isn't it? It's
And not in an entitled way.
no.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's sort of, we can walk down the street wearing a t-shirt and someone might understand that, and not everyone would, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've walked down
And we have.
with a Bullet Club t-shirt on in Nottingham, and seem to always
so
get
cliche.
a too sweet
There's a
from
too
someone.
sweet there, you know.
And it's just that, you know,
you're part of it, you know.
I think all wrestling fans kind of know that it's a bit odd.
But I think you've got if you're not a self-aware wrestling fan, then you really are a moron. I think it's fun, it's funny, it's kind of wacky, it's silly, it's you get emotional over things that you think, well, this is just crazy. But then, if it has an effect and you enjoy it, enjoy it. You know, there's no judgment here.
There's
And there's a lot of judgment in the wrestling community, not from us.
Not from that. There
We're
is
just
judgment.
two normal guys. Going through the world, loving a bit of wrestling, loving a bit of man on man, woman on woman.
This episode
Rise of the Royal Rumble, woman on man. We can talk about that another time.
This has really just been a long episode of us trying to get you to not judge us for liking wrestling.
Don't judge us for liking wrestling.
I needed to burp.
Did you?
It's gone.
We
now.
like wrestling.
We
I like
bloody
wrestling.
like it.
I've seen it. Can I do it? No.
No, sir.
We did chop each other a few times, didn't we? We had a chop off.
That really hurt. Just one of them.
Even one was painful. There's some great compilations online of people sort of challenging wrestlers. Oh, go on, you can chop me. I can take it. Just knocks them into the next century.
Yeah.
You know.
So before we finish, why don't I lay this at your door?
Go on.
For anyone who's still listening, maybe he's not into wrestling. One, why are you still listening?
you're a mental.
You're
case.
a glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
You are.
What a strange person you are.
But before we call you any more names,
I've got some names lined up.
What would give someone a suggestion? Maybe a YouTube person just to check them out.
Or like a match, do you think, to get
a
people
match
into
or
wrestling?
someone's highlights, or let's say
Almost highlight reels are almost better than a match.
It's like,
because
hi, I'm nice
it's
to meet you.
disposable, isn't it? It's
You
quick.
like wrestling? What? Give me one
Oh
person.
man, I mean, it's hard, isn't it?
It's got, because you could say Kenny Omega, you could say
I
Okada.
think hate the word niche, but it's too specific of that style of wrestling to be understood by someone who not understood, but to be accessible. That's something you even like we did. That's something you come to a few months in, a few years in. I don't think the first match you're going to watch is Okada Omega. I just think you need something a little bit more sports entertainment, unless you're like a UFC fan and are you interested in wrestling.
Yeah.
I just think for the whole wrestling package, you want something a bit more sports entertainment-y to get you in, like a Rock Hogan.
You know what?
kind of thing.
You know what? That was on my mind.
You know what I mean?
I was just about to say, I know what mine would be.
Yeah.
If you're a person who's never watched wrestling before and you want the total package of what it is, you watch The Rock versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania.
I mean,
and
you know who The Rock is. You know who Hulk Hogan is.
And
It's just a start. It's just a teaser. Dip your toes in.
It's just the most electrifying
man in sports entertainment.
Exactly. It's the most. It's an absolute storm in a bottle.
James Storm in a bottle.
Exactly. It's unbelievable.
The crowd reaction.
The crowd.
That, as much as anything, can make you invested in a match. It's emotional, but just the swell of a crowd in that kind of
unreal
thing. You know, I've never been to like a massive football game or anything, but I'd imagine it's kind of a similar feeling of just kind of unanimous kind of gang-like. It's kind of crazy. There's a plethora of matches we could say, but I'm just off the top of my head, it's hard. You know, you could say matches a lot more modern as of the last few years, but I just think to dip your toes in something like an icon versus icon, a Rock Hogan, you know, just so you go, okay, I kind of get this. I see what moves they're doing. I see the story here. Let's go a little bit deeper.
A more modern one might be AJ John Cena at SummerSlam.
That was classic. I remember when we saw Sami Zayn Nakamura from NXT. That was my mind. Gargano, Andrade was fantastic. But you know, if you're not a big wrestling fan, do a little bit of research. It's interesting. You know, if you like your soaps, if you like that kind of thing, I think you would actually like wrestling. You know?
I do as well.
There's no reason why you wouldn't. It's stories, it's entertainment, it's theatre, it's funny, it's sad. You get invested. You hate it a lot of the time.
A lot of hate.
There's a lot of nerds like us that will talk about it.
For what are we on now?
For free.
How long have we been talking now?
I think we've gone. We're 55.
Lord. 55 minutes on just why we like wrestling.
Any other key points we need to go over?
Well, I think we should
wrap it up.
We've probably hit all of them.
We'll talk about obviously wrestling a lot of other times because it's in the title.
Why don't we talk about what's coming up for these lovely people? So we've got one more episode.
Yes. So
that we've planned.
Yeah.
Do you remember
that called?
Do you remember the title? Do you remember?
It's called
Headbanging in the Bee Gees.
Yeah.
Mutually exclusive.
Mutually exclusive. Is that inflection? Mutually exclusive.
Exclusive. Exclusive.
Callbacks.
And I think in that it will be a kind of similar version of this.
Where we began, what we like, what we don't like, the kind of the history.
How we ended up loving the Bee Gees and Sepultura.
And Brazilian heavy metal. I think this has kind of laid the foundations for, you know, for people just like understand us a little bit more. We want to develop this kind of musical wrestling community around us in that, you know, it's done so much for us that we want to welcome people in with open arms. But don't wrong me, because I'll chop you. Woo!
And on that note, I think it's time to call it a day.
Ring.
Time to ring the bell.
If you smell.
We did that.
The Rock and Roller Podcast is cooking.
I've been Kenny.
I've been Jack. Ding, ding, ding.
Big time.
Peace out.